All right, we've spent this week sufficiently hyping up the entire NFC South, or at least 3/4 of the NFC South. It's time today to pick a division winner. Are you ready, EJ?
No, absolutely not.
I think that this division gets bad rap. It really does. And mainly because people don't watch very many NFC South games. It's not like, the Saints, the Falcons, and the Panthers are topping the ratings every single week, but that doesn't mean that they aren't good football teams. Doesn't mean they aren't entertaining football teams. Mm-hmm. They're just forgotten about football teams, and we're going to try to set that right.
I think so. I agree that there's plenty of good football to watch in this division, mostly because they love to kick the hell out of each other.
Oh, indeed they do. I mean, again, last year, every single team finished within a game of each other. This year, it's probably not going to be much different than that. So we're picking everything about this division. Again, division winner, offensive defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, best free agent addition, everything from a division-wide lens. Jay, roll the intro. Welcome, one and all, once again to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Coleman, here with my wonderful co-host, EJ Snyder, talking NFC South today. Obviously, everybody knows what the records were last year. Everybody knows that this was a division that was getting repeatedly mocked, and for good reason. And we know how close it was. What I think people don't realize, and I'll let you kind of do the entire power score spiel once again, but this division was not the lowest cumulative power score division, not even close. And in fact, they were better than a division that we already went through on this series, that we talked up quite a bit, the NFC North. They were even better.
One of the cool things about power score is that it can be compared across team to team, division to division, even conference to conference, if we want to cut it that way. You can really see in terms of, again, the basis of how good football teams are at being football teams, how they compare to their peers inside the division, outside the division, in the other conference. It's a very level playing field sort of metric. So speaking of level playing fields, 2022, yes, the Bucs won the division with a losing record, 8-9. Carolina, New Orleans, Atlanta all won 7 games. So in terms of evenness, this was certainly the most even division. Winner was Tampa Bay, as we talked about, playoff participant Tampa Bay, almost by default. If we had different rules for playoff seeding, the Bucs wouldn't have gotten in, but because they win a division, they do. Any late season surge teams? No, nobody did very well in the last 5 games. So again, they're all the same, they're all even, they're all within 1 game of each other. That comes up to a bootleg power score, and these we do individually. If you want to see how they're created, go back to the individual episodes, take a look. We'll give you all the metrics and how we came to these scores. But again, lower score is better. It's like golf. You want to be number 1. Buccaneers had a power score of 17. Panthers, 21. Saints, 19. Falcons, 19. The way we do divisional power scores is a little bit different. We don't average them out. We just add them up. So we take those 4 scores, add them together. The division power score is 76. And again, lower is better. But as you mentioned, NFC North last year was 77. So NFC South escapes the ignominy of being the worst division in all of football in terms of power score. They're down there. But again, these were middle-of-the-road teams that were knocking the heck out of each other.
And once again, we see the effects of the Vikings punching well above their weight. Win total wise, feels like we bring them up constantly. It's because they were
our power score problem children.
yes, an anomaly in a lot of different ways, both them and the Chargers. And overall, looking at the NFC North, even though they did have a 13-win team in it, the average competency within the NFC North was not as good as the average competency within the NFC South, and that sure does say a lot. Now, doesn't mean that the NFC North won't be a better division than the South this year, because we think it will, but last year was an entirely different story, and one that maybe didn't get enough credit for how, again, I'll say it, competent the NFC South was.
It's kind of like our grades at the end on the report card, right?
Yeah.
Neutral is not a negative.
No,
right?
no.
And this was, if we had to give a report card to this division for everything all wrapped up into one, as unfair as that is, it would be neutral.
Yeah, it makes sense that we are doing them directly in the middle of this series because
Yes,
that is
it
where
does.
they belong.
Yes, it does.
In terms of notable free agent additions, again, up on screen is a list of notable free agents by team. EJ and I are tasked each with picking one that we believe is the most impactful free agent added throughout the entire division. I went with Miles Sanders because we know that this is a very run-heavy division, and especially the Panthers themselves are a run-heavy team. Even under Frank Reich, I do not expect that to change, and they happen to run a lot of the concepts that Miles Sanders excelled in last year in Philly: inside zone, power, and duo. Like, Miles Sanders has developed into a very good running back. He's a better player now than he was when he entered the league, which is not a common thing for running backs. A lot of time running backs enter at their peak and then tail off from there. Miles Sanders entered here, spiked up here, and we're kind of at the top of that spike. So he's kind of at the height of his powers. The Panthers got him for a relatively, I don't want to say cheap, affordable deal given the running back market. And I think that, if he stays healthy behind that offensive line, given that they run a lot of the stuff that we know he's good at, I would not be stunned whatsoever if he has like a 1,400 total yard season, double-digit touchdowns, and really asserts himself as one of the most productive running backs in the league.
He had to be rubbing his hands together when he got the offer from Carolina as a running back. To look at what they did down the stretch, second half of the season, yes, they changed coaches, but they really decided, all right, that's it. We're going to hang our hat or helmet on the run game. We have this powerful offensive line. We're going to let them loose and let them just tear up defenses. As a running back coming in, you're like, oh, yes, please, sign me up for that. Plug me into that system. Make me the beneficiary of all those amazing blocks. And he's used to that coming from Philadelphia. Not like they have a terrible line. In fact, they have one of the best lines in the NFL. But that, I think, almost limits the landing spots that Miles Sanders would be really comfortable going to, because if he went to, an offensive line that was graded 15 spots lower or 20 spots lower than Philadelphia, he'd be having to work for a lot more of those yards. And instead, he goes to a very good, I dare say, ascending young line and says, I'm just going to pick up where I left off.
And ascending because they only added to their depth in the draft. Like, they added Chandler Zavala, who, if you want to hear more about him, go watch the Panthers episode. But he's going to be a top-tier swing guard early in his career that eventually will be a starter somewhere, whether it's right guard or left guard, because he can play either side. Both of their projected starting guards are coming off injury right now, so he might get a chance to play early on in the year. And if he does get out there early on in the year, I'm not entirely convinced that he's given the job back because he's that good, and he's their third guard. You got Ike Ekwonu, who all signs point to him absolutely working out and being a slam dunk pick for them. It's a good line. It's a really good line. The fact that they were able to trade CMC and still be one of the most productive run games in the league says a lot. Like, they really didn't miss a beat with Deontay Foreman. So I love me some Miles Sanders. Who do you got?
I got Derek Carr. You got to go with the quarterback position in my estimation. New Orleans has been looking since Drew Brees retired, possibly even right before Drew Brees retired when his arm really left him. They've not been able to find a suitable successor, and I'm not saying that Derek Carr is going to be Drew Brees. He's not. He is the best thing that they have had since prime Drew Brees. Is it the same level? It's not. Is it a lot better than what they've had? I feel like it is. Now, Derek Carr gets slandered regularly around NFL circles for not being a top 10 quarterback, for not being a quarterback that you can sort of hitch your team wagon to and will make everybody around him better. But Derek Carr is a very good, very competent pro-level quarterback. When surrounded with weapons, we've seen him be tremendously effective, get really hot, carry the Raiders, especially early in seasons, to sterling records. He has that ability. He's not coming off a major injury. He is not, as far as I'm concerned, at the backside of his career in terms of physical decline. This is a huge step up for New Orleans, and it allows them, or will allow them, a lot more options and ways to go on offense than they've had in the past. And look, quarterback's the most impactful position probably in all of pro sports, certainly in the NFL. you make a major upgrade at that position to a team that was already pretty solid. Again, mid-pack, has some very nice young weapons. This feels like the move in the division that's going to make the biggest overall difference to me.
Well, yeah, because there's a huge difference between Andy Dalton and Derek Carr. I know a lot of people pretend that there isn't, but there absolutely is, especially at this stage in Dalton's career, right? It's one of the largest year-to-year upgrades at quarterback for any franchise in the NFL, because it's very rare that a quarterback like Carr even gets on the market. And honestly, the circumstances that led to Carr even being on the market were
shaky,
not entirely normal, right? And in a for a normal franchise with where normal things happen.
Are we calling the Raiders a normal franchise?
They're about as abnormal as it fucking gets, EJ.
Okay, then. But I'm with you. It's not something that happens very often. It's certainly not something that usually happens without a draft pick changing hands. That has more to do with how Carr played it than how the Raiders played it. But the bottom line is, regardless of all that, it doesn't matter on the stat sheet. Like, he's in New Orleans. He has some good young weapons. He's got, I would say, a very solid offensive line in front of him. He's not starting from zero. This is not a rebuild job. This is going to be from week 1, they are much better than they were week 17 last year.
My dark horse runner-up is Jesse Bates, by the way, which I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
I considered Jesse Bates on this list. Dark horses were Jesse Bates and DJ Chark in that order. Also really like Kalen Saunders, but in terms of just pure impact, Jesse Bates might be better quicker than Derek Carr is, because although he is somewhat going to be a quarterback of their secondary and yes, is adjusting to a new system, he's a better player at his position than Derek Carr is.
Very fair.
And
Very fair.
So could be better quicker. In terms of overall impact, it's tough to overstate the sort of magnification factor that a quarterback has, touching the ball every down, the decisions he makes. As he goes, so goes the team. That's really why I picked Carr in the end.
Let's look at the rookie classes now. And again, these are not the entire rookie classes for each team. These are notable rookies. If you want our thoughts on the entire draft for each individual team, go check out their individual team episodes. But these are the notable rookies in the division. Honestly, all of them had very worthy choices here for our favorite rookie additions across the entire division. I certainly considered both of the Bucks nominees, so to speak, between Cody Mauch and Kalijah Kancey, but in the end, I had to go with Bryce Young. He's a modern-day kid, so of course I'm going to be super biased there. But.
I think at this point I am legally obligated. I signed something at some point that said if somebody's a modern-day grad and Brett likes them, he gets to pick them. I'm pretty sure that's inked somewhere in all the things.
It took everything in me not to pick Nico Remigio. But no, Bryce Young. Even if he went to Servite like a heathen, I still would have picked him here because he's an incredible quarterback, an incredible prospect. If he was just a little bit bigger, we would have been comparing him to Joe Burrow, because in terms of play style, to me, he plays like Joe Burrow. He's great in big moments. He's got eyes in the back of his head. He's got elite pocket presence. He has touch. He has accuracy. He has enough arm strength to threaten the field. By no means is his arm Anthony Richardson's, but it's still more than enough, just like Joe's was more than enough. Again, if he was just a little bit bigger, nobody would have been questioning him at all, and he was still good enough to go first overall. He is as legit as it gets, one of the best quarterback prospects I have ever seen play live with my own eyes, and I wish him all the success in the world.
And I think a lot of Carolina's hopes ride on that, and I think they're well placed. I feel good for the Carolina fans that there is no sure thing in the draft, certainly not at quarterback, certainly not up high. Bryce Young has a better combination of skills and attributes that really matter to the position than many that have come before him. Rest assured, Panthers fans, you're going to get somebody that can amplify your team. Whether or not he does depends on a lot of things, but it's not because he never showed those attributes in college or high school for that matter. He's been showing them the whole time. And you could always tell that people were talking about Bryce Young because the first and only argument was, well, he's not very big.
Yeah, but that was it.
And he might get hurt. And you're like, cool. What else don't you like? I pretty much like everything else. Yeah, so I will give you that he is small. I will not give you that he is frail because he did play in the SEC and survived very big guys who will now be chasing him around on Sundays because most of them got drafted and still played at an extremely high level with things that you can't teach. Mm-hmm. Anticipation, speed, both in what I would call pre-snap and post-snap, reads, good enough mobility to stay out of the way and open up throwing lanes, wait until the last second to get rid of the ball, wait until the absolute last sort of microsecond that a route comes open, toss it, get splattered, get up. He did all that already. Like, it's not like, I think about so many quarterback prospects that we've talked about in the last even 3 to 4 years that had a season starting, a season and a half at a small school or was interrupted by injury or any number of things. And Bryce Young's none of that.
Yeah.
Right? He, in terms of pure starting, yeah, it's many more snaps than a lot of contemporary quarterbacks in a more competitive conference and at a higher level of execution. So really, really like Bryce Young. But again, I contractually couldn't pick him because I'd signed my rights away to you. Got to go with Bijan Robinson. Oh, so terrible. I have to drop all the way to Bijan Robinson. Bijan gets drafted by Atlanta in the top 10. Cost me a bottle of booze in a bottle bet to a friend of mine, but I'm not even sad about it because he's a great player. He's incredibly versatile. One of the safest prospects in this entire draft. And it really, my only hesitancy in picking Bijan is the Atlanta coaching staff because I've seen what they've done to Kyle Pitts. And I'm like...
Except this coaching staff runs the ball all the time, so who else is going to do it?
I see that. But it's just like, oh, transcendent offensive talent went to Atlanta? Oh, no. Actually, I think Bijan has a better chance to produce. And look, great kid, amazingly productive in multiple roles, in multiple ways, is the best. I think, honestly, could play receiver.
He could. Yeah, he could be a slot receiver.
Could just start being a receiver in the NFL, which is ridiculous when we're talking about the transition from college to the pros. If you said, hey, Bijan, you're a slot receiver, he'd be like, okay, he'd probably go out and get 600 or 700 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns, which would place him among.
I swear to God, you put him in San Francisco, he'd be Debo.
He could be very Debo-like, and there are very few players that I'll ever put the Debo label on because Debo is so rare in terms of the mix of skills and attributes. Bijan's right there. So if they use him anywhere near what I would call correctly, there's a very good chance to be the best offensive rookie in this division.
Honorable mention, by the way, just to piss off Hockeys, Matthew Bergeron. He's a Steelers fan and they drafted offensive linemen. They got good ones themselves, but he was obsessed with Matthew Bergeron, and for good reason. I was as well. But I want to give him his flowers too. He's going to probably be the starting left guard in front of Bijan, and he could not be a better fit in that system. I think he very easily could have played tackle in the NFL, but he is a phenomenal guard prospect because he's quicker than most guards. He's more explosive than most guards. He has more length than a lot of guards. I really do think, and I mentioned this in the Falcons episode, I really do think he's going to be their Joe Thuney, and he's going to play there for a long, 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 long time.
I'll give you 2 honorable mentions.
Okay.
One is best rookie that's going to play really well on a bad team.
Kalijah Kancey? There you go.
I think Kalijah Kancey is already penciled in as a starter. Many of these rookies aren't. They're backups or rotational pieces. Kalijah Kancey already penciled in as a starter for Tampa Bay on a good defense, but what should overall we think is not going to be the greatest team. He's going to get a lot of reps. I think he's going to get a lot of really good looks because he is not on a line that lacks talent at all. He's got some of our favorites right next to him. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is right there.
He's got
Vita's
Shaq
on the other side.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of good players around him. You're not going to be able to double everybody. I very highly doubt they're going to double a rookie over some of those guys, and he's probably going to show up even if it's on a team that doesn't do well overall. And My second one is just the I hope. The I hope honorable mention. It's Brian Bresee.
Oh, yeah. As in you hope it's freshman Brian Bresee, not
I
junior.
hope he can return to the level of play that he's seen before in his career, because that guy is an awesome and dominant football player.
Yeah.
Like, technique, not even withstanding. He was an 18-year-old freshman just taking guys in front of him, whipping them out of the way. And I mean, in what is kind of jaw-dropping, staggering highlights. If you don't believe me, go back 2 years, look at Brian Bresee debuting for Clemson in that season as a very raw 18-year-old, just whipping grown men.
I think his season high in sacks was a freshman, or career high in sacks was a freshman as well, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so I want to see that guy on a football field again. That's just like pure guilty pleasure. Like, please let that happen, football gods. I want to see Brian Bresee return to prominence. If he does, it's going to look like an amazing pick for New Orleans.
I always look at Bears Twitter during pre-draft season because I always like to see them just go nuts over people. You know what the most common comp for Bresee was in Bears Twitter? You know it. Tommy Harris.
Ah, damn it. I knew that was
coming.
coming.
About lofty expectations.
I knew that was coming, and it still hurts. I actually don't agree with it just from a play style standpoint, but I get where they're getting it because of the absolute unreal sort of supernatural burst. He just had, but Bresee is even bigger than Harris.
Bresee's bigger than Tommy. Tommy was quicker.
Yeah, but it's if he is 85% of young Tommy Harris, it'll be a massive win for the Saints.
Still think they win the Super Bowl if he doesn't get hurt.
Just don't do
I know,
that.
I know. I'm
to
just
me.
digging. I'm digging at you.
Don't do that to me.
All right, division predictions. Starting off with division MVP. You once upon a time chose a defensive player for division MVP when we talk about the NFC West, right? It was Nick Bosa.
Yeah, I believe so.
I'm going back to that well.
Yep.
I'm taking Brian Burns, NFC South division MVP. There's very few divisions that I think a non-quarterback could win division MVP. I'm going with Brian Burns. I think he's already had some stellar years. This one I think is going to be a masterclass for him. The best year that he's had, and that's saying a lot. I'm thinking legitimate possibility of 16-plus sacks, bunch of forced fumbles, outrageous pressure numbers. Like, I think this is the year of Brian Burns. Can't wait to see what he does.
Yes and no. Yes, Brian Burns is awesome, Panthers fans. I love me some Brian Burns. I think he is an amazing player. My hesitancy with picking him, I picked him for my defensive player of the year in this division last year, and was fully confident that he could make good on that. And he had a great year. Excellent player, excellent young player. Jiro Avero, the defensive coordinator, is coming in as a Fangio disciple, and they love to rush them 4 up straight.
Yes,
They
you're
do
not wrong.
not want to give him help. And they also love to take their primary rush threat, which, make no mistake, on Carolina, it is Brian Burns, and use them to soak up double teams. Now, I disagree with that vociferously. I saw Vic do it in Chicago with Khalil Mack. It was painful to watch. It is purposeful, and the rest of the defense works because of it. You can argue that one up and down with other fans. If they are not producing in terms of pressures and sacks, they don't see the overall value of those players. I think it's a strange strategy to take your very best rusher and say, go be the decoy like 75% of the time. Not saying that Burns won't get sacks. I'm saying I actually think that scheme suppresses his supernatural ability a little bit. So I'm going to go with Chris Olave, which again is a non-quarterback winning division MVP. Olave had a really, really like historically good rookie season,
Definitely.
even without quarterbacking. He gets a quarterback. He enters his sophomore year knowing more things. He is the clear number one in New Orleans. If he establishes a relationship early with Derek Carr, he could have a transcendent receiver season in New Orleans, even if the team's not great. Maybe especially if the team's not great. If they're behind
they
all
got
the
to
time,
throw a lot, yeah.
and they're whipping it up, Chris Olave could have 15 or 1,600 yards, 6 or 7 touchdowns, and just all the catches. Because there isn't really even a legitimate number 2. I know a lot of people, Saints fans, will say Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas hasn't been at that level for a while. If he returns to that, it's great news for the Saints. There is no guarantee that that'll happen.
Yeah.
And Olave is like the clear elevated number one, like the other two guys are 3A and 3B. If he establishes that connection quickly with Carr, he could have a season that makes people unable to sort of look away.
Rashid Shaheed slander. What the hell?
No, never for me. Never for me.
No, Olave's fantastic. And I liked him a lot coming out, but he's exceeded even my expectations. Both him and Jahan Dotson. There was a couple of rookie receivers last year where it was like, I like them, but I like them in certain roles, right? And then both Dotson and Olave came out and were like, we can beat press coverage now. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's fucking great. Just go to the pros and suddenly get good at things you weren't good at. Love when that happens. It makes me look like a dumbass.
Some people saw that. At least on Olave. I'm not going to claim it on Dotson because I was a little bit lower on Dotson than you were. But Olave was my, again, I'm not going to say number one, but like number one coming out of Ohio State.
Yeah.
Which was the big debate. And
remember at one point, let's see, it was Olave, Garrett Wilson, Jamison Williams, JSN, and I think Marvin was a freshman a couple years ago, right?
It's one of those rooms like the Georgia running back room that had the four guys in it, or the Alabama running back room, the Alabama quarterback room at one point. Like there are certain rooms in college football that are just ludicrous.
I think it was 5 first-round picks. Well, because we know Marvin's going first round. And 5 first-round picks. God, Brian Hartline's good at his job.
Yeah, Brian Hartline could jump to the pros anytime he wanted to.
All right. Offensive player of the year. I went with Chris Olave for all the reasons we talked about.
Yep.
He's turned into a super weapon. He's good at everything now. He's amazing. He's Chris Olave. He's the number one in New Orleans with a bullet. You went with the other New Orleans Saint that we talked about a lot today.
Yeah, I went with Derek Carr because I really think he is going to play second fiddle to Olave, which is a crazy thing to say about a quarterback, but he's going to be the feeder of Chris Olave, and Chris Olave is going to be the superstar of that offense, I think. And if that occurs, Derek Carr is going to put up numbers, again, in a somewhat, I don't want to say weak because it's not weak, but very balanced division where there aren't a lot of superstar players in great situations. Now, there are a lot of names we're not talking about here. We talked about Mike Evans a lot. I think Mike Evans should be on this list. I don't think Mike Evans is going to be on this list only because of Tampa Bay's quarterback situation.
Watch Kyle Trask come out and just make us look like idiots.
Dude, the balcony's right there if that happens because
Could you fucking imagine all these Tampa fans that are just like buying their Caleb Williams jerseys and Kyle Trask comes out and wins 5 games and fucks it up?
My jaw would dislocate. That would be the most surprising result of the 2023 season, bar none for me if that happens. But I really think Derek Carr is going to ball out, but I think Olave is going to ball out even more. Like back to Mike Evans, great player, Hall of Fame player, die on that hill, 100%. Does he make the list this year because of situation? Kind of like the Brian Burns thing I talked about, except cranked up to 11. I just don't think he does. Great player. He is gonna work really hard for that Buccaneers team because he always does. He's gonna get nothing for it.
Also, ditto for Godwin, ditto for Rashad White.
Correct.
More Bucs players we like. Really, honestly, the problem with the Bucs is they have good players, but that top slice is thin, and everything beyond that, we're like, ooh, okay.
And they need a quarterback. They're basically New Orleans last year, right? Tom solved that problem for him. Tom leaves. It's basically like when Breeze left New Orleans. Now Tampa Bay enters that phase of trying to find the next thing. Yeah. Are they going to do it through the draft? Are they going to get lucky in free agency like New Orleans did? We don't know, but neither one of us feel like they have the answer right now.
New Orleans got lucky in free agency multiple times. That's how they got Breeze in the first place.
True story.
Very, very lucky.
Fortuitous shoulder injury.
All right, defensive player of the year. Back to Carolina for me. I'm going with J.C. Horn, who had an absolutely outrageous grade on when he was coming out in the draft. And when he's been healthy, honestly, he's paid it off. He's been a great corner in the NFL, again, when he's been healthy. I would say in terms of durability and consistency, Patrick Surtain, out of that debate, has won so far, but I think we're in for an absolutely ridiculous year from J.C. Horn. Again, I picked Brian Burns as division MVP, but I think in terms of defensive player of the division of the year, give me J.C. Horn. He's incredible. He's a perfect fit for this defense for all the reasons that Surtain was a perfect fit in Avero's defense in Denver. They're going to use Horn the same way, and I think he's going to do just as well as Surtain did.
This defense funnels opportunities the primary cornerback's way. Surtain was an early star because of it. I think he'll continue to be a star because he's a great player. I had him ranked in a hair slice above J.C. Horn. He was my CB1 that year. J.C. Horn is going to benefit from the system, just like I think Brian Burns might be suppressed by it a little bit. Again, this defense funnels so many opportunities that guy's way, and J.C. Horn is 100% ready for all that smoke.
Yeah, because they will leave him on an island, just like they leave Surtain on an island, and they're going to play 3 over 2, and they're going to play 2 against 1 on the backside, and the only one-on-one on the field is going to be with the top corner. It was Surtain in Denver. It's Horn here, so he's going to get targets, which means he's going to get chances for PBUs. He's going to get chances for INTs, and he's good enough to pay it off.
100% agree with you. I'm going to keep pounding the rock. Defensive Player of the Year, Grady Jarrett for me. He'll never win it because of the position he plays. He is one of the sort of top 10 most underappreciated players on defense in the NFL.
Easily.
And he is going to do his thing again, just like I said about Mike Evans for the Bucs. He is going to toil away. He's going to do all the dirty work for the Falcons. People are occasionally going to go, oh, yeah, blah, 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 and Grady Jarrett over and over again like they always do. This is my flaming arrow into the air just to bring attention to the Grady Jarrett case. I realize he's not going to win it. He's going to play great again this year. He plays great every year. Very important player to that defense. Not quite the DJ Reader influence from Cincinnati, but like this close.
Tiny little bit.
This close.
Offensive Rookie of the Year. We both picked Bryce Young for obvious reasons. Everything we've gone over already. Defensive Rookie of the Year, somebody we have also already mentioned, Kalijah Kancey. If there is one position group that the Bucs have that's good, it is defensive line. They're very similar to like Arizona a couple of years back, where it's like, all right, starters, we can have a conversation about them being a good football team. Everything after that top layer is just so thin and either unproven or just not good enough, right? And that's why I think that ultimately they're going to be front and center in the Caleb sweepstakes, is because not only do they not have a quarterback, but they are not insulated from injury whatsoever, which is why Kalijah Kancey, whether he's an early starter or not, will probably get significant snaps, because as far as interior pass rush goes, he's kind of all they got.
This is a scheme, and I know we've talked about scheme already 3 times. This is a scheme that's going to amplify his abilities. Got a defensively minded head coach in a scheme that schemes interior pressure, schemes one-on-one lanes, and like promotes interior pressure. Kalijah Kancey comes into this as a presumed starter. He is going to take starter reps in that defense, in a defense that famously concentrates, just like we said, opportunities for J.C. Horn. These are opportunities for Kalijah Kancey. They are going to serve up opportunities for him to penetrate and hassle the quarterback. He's really good at that.
Yeah.
So this is an alignment of player skill, scheme priority, sort of coach leaning, right? All the things are lining up to make Kalijah Kancey have every opportunity to have a tremendous rookie season.
And I think even if, in his career, if he never turns into, the run stopper that some of his contemporaries are, and he's just seen as a pass rush specialist, that's fine. That's very important in the modern NFL. Even if he's not playing on first downs and he's only coming in on second and long or third and medium plus, he could still get 10 sacks a year just from that. And that would pay for the contract.
Yeah,
for me.
10 sacks a year as an interior defender is rare air.
But he's one of the few that I think could do it.
I don't disagree.
One of the few. Again, first down, let's get him rested on the sidelines on those. But third down, yeah, he's on the field. All right, Coach of the Year. It's very often that we see Coach of the Year be somebody who comes into a franchise and turns them around, right?
Yep.
That that converts a downtrodden franchise from a culture of losing to a culture of winning. Again, I do want to give a side note. Love Steve Wilkes. Thought he did a fantastic job of doing that mid-season last year.
Correct.
Turning them from a losing culture to a winning culture literally almost overnight. But since he didn't get his shot to continue that work, and he's now elsewhere, and they brought in Frank Reich, I can't choose Steve Wilkes. So I'm going to go with Frank Reich because I do think that this is an ascending team that, well, I won't spoil my pick for division winner, but they have a shot.
I agree they have a shot. I think they're capable of winning double-digit games, even with a rookie starting quarterback. Rookie starting quarterbacks always struggle, but there's enough talent. It's not a typical team that takes a number one overall quarterback. They're a better team than that, better equipped, rosters deeper, more well assembled and balanced, right? It's not one side of the ball that has good players and the other is sort of bereft of talent. Carolina's got a shot to surprise some people this year because of that. I'm going to go with Dennis Allen because, man, Dennis Allen calls a hell of a defense. Mm-hmm. He makes it very difficult for the other team to score, and they haven't been able to find the offensive complement to make that sort of system or theory work. This year, with the addition of Carr, the second year in the system, some of the free agents they brought in on offense, I think they can get enough offensive firepower. I think they can get enough points to pay off the fact that Dennis Allen's going to call lockdown defense. He did for the second half of last year. And if they continue that defensive above average play, I think they were number 4 overall in DVOA for the last half of last season.
And also an EPA, yeah.
Very, very solid defense. If they can play defense like that and get some, to use a baseball term, run support, right? I think of him as a very good starting pitcher that strikes out like 12 guys, a night, and his team puts up 1 run, so they don't win.
Yeah.
If they can put up 3 or 4 runs, which I think they can with Carr and Olave and Williams, I think it's possible. Maybe he gets his due.
All of that to say, though, when it came time to picking a division winner, even though we love what Dennis Allen has done, and even though we think the Saints are a tough team, and we think the Falcons are a tough team, and we think the Bucs have some talent that we like.
I was waiting for you to say tough team just so I could jump on that, but
Mike Evans going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah.
Woo, Bucs.
We're still picking Carolina to win the division. Both of us kind of agreed on this one that if we had to put money on it, and we probably will, Carolina's the pick in terms of overall roster quality, depth, coaching, a young quarterback we believe in, a schedule that is tough but not insurmountable, and not to mention that I think in January they would have the best shot to win a playoff game. It's got to be Carolina.
Yeah, I'm with Carolina as well. Bryce Young, I think, is one of the rare quarterbacks that can overcome a lot of the rookie mistakes. He'll make them. But again, the team around him is good enough. They have enough talent on defense, and now they have a defensive coordinator we think can, again, put more of that talent in better positions to succeed. It's a question of how early that all gels together, as it always is when there's a new coach and a new scheme that comes to town. But he's, Avero's not without pieces to be able to sort of manipulate that defense and keep the opponent scoring down. And then it's up to Reich and Josh McCown and Bryce Young to sort of huddle it up and say, hey, we've got some skill pieces here. How do we squeeze points out of this? And if they can do that on both sides of the ball, it's a tall order. But if they do, I think they're better than any team in this division. So we'll see.
Let's say they do win the division and they're going up against insert NFC East team here in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Are there any NFC East teams you think they can beat?
That's a tough call. Maybe the Giants if Daniel Jones has a bad day. Like if Daniel Jones has a really average day.
God, that would be a bloodbath of a game.
It's not going to be fun, but playoff football, good playoff football especially, is always evenly matched. And, you're saying, do you think they could get one over on a team from what arguably was the toughest division in football last year? The answer is yeah. If the quarterback comes out and misfires a little bit, they could. If Daniel Jones comes out and plays the lights out like he did late in the season last year, or early in the playoff round last year, no, they won't beat him.
It's an interesting thought exercise,
Always.
Especially as we keep going through all these NFC divisions, because everybody talks like the NFC's garbage and that there's no good teams in the NFC outside of Philly, and it's like
Power Score says otherwise.
It's pretty darn close.
Yeah.
Like, obviously AFC has the quarterback advantage, but in terms of roster advantage, it's pretty darn even. Very even, actually. Like, there's a lot of good clubs in the NFC, Carolina being one of them.
True.
All right, before we get out of here, EJ, you got anything else?
Yeah, if we have properly inspired you to be excited about your team, and we hope we have, because we aim towards the positive. That's what we do here. We get some comments that say, I wish you guys fought more. I wish you guys disagreed. You weren't here this morning. But anyways.
We get a lot of comments asking for more negativity, and it's like, why?
That's not what we do here. That's not our brand. You can find that in a lot of places. But if we have got you all pumped up and you are excited, you go to your drawer, pull it open, and realize, wow, my favorite Panthers, Saints, Bucks, t-shirt, hoodie, whatever has holes in it. Check out our clothing sponsor at homage.com. They have an NFL license. They have multiple designs for every team that are fun. Throwback stuff. Throwback uniforms are coming back this year in the NFL. So if you want your creamsicle Buck stuff, head to homage.com.
Dear God, no.
Use the link in the description. Anything you buy using that helps support us. We get a cut of that. So we really appreciate it. And certainly Homage does as well. Plus, it's the softest stuff you will ever own. Those shirts
I'm wearing it right now.
So comfortable.
And the hoodies too. Like, honestly, I advocate for the hoodies more than anything. I've probably watched this 4 times at this point, and it still feels brand new. So
the best.
We are trying to bribe them to tell us who their suppliers are, because we want those suppliers to make our merch too.
We want them to make our t-shirts.
So can't speak highly enough of Homage. Again, go use the link. Any purchase supports us. Also, if you happen to be in the mood for fantasy football, really any kind of fantasy football, but primarily best ball fantasy, or pick'ems during the season, or looking at season-long lines, whatever it happens to be, go check out Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code BOOTLEG. They'll match your deposit up to $100. So again, you can get basically a free $100 just by using our promo code, if that's something you're into. We'll be back next week with the AFC South, where I'll probably get a lot more mileage out of this Texans hoodie once again. A lot of very exciting young quarterbacks in the AFC South. It's actually a fun division to talk about again. So we'll be diving into that starting Monday. And until next time, later.